I'm not sure if everyone heard the young man's question, but he's basically asking me what I believe the relationship is between gentrification, community space, and social control. And I want to address this query quickly because I realize we have other questions circulating. But I would like for all of you, first and foremost, to pick up this book. We should have called it Gentrification and the Disinvestment of People of Color and Poor Folks. But nevertheless, Uprooting Urban America is still a catchy and provocative title. At any rate, what is the relationship between gentrification, community space, and social control? And I would add to that contested community space. But let's look at this intersection in the context of youth, just to kind of narrow down the variables, and which will give us, I think, a clear, more precise picture of this phenomenon. Now, as of 2013, Chicago is the 7th most gentrified city in America. The top 3 cities are Boston, Seattle, and New York. And this ranking is based on rising home prices. Some African-American, Puerto Rican, and Chicano communities in Chicago, for example, are slow to gentrify due to their proximity to other crime areas. Now, gentrification, and some of you heard the term renewal, and they're used synonymously, essentially is the arrival of wealthier people in an existing urban district, which increases rents and property values. But it also changes the area's character and ethos. And so the term gentrification is often used negatively, and we already know this, as it usually involves the displacement or uprooting of poor communities by rich outsiders. Now let's talk about contested community space. And the urban environment is divided into a broad range of private and public domains, often with diverse gender, class, and ethnic variation. Those areas where young people congregate in the public sphere include parks, roller skating rinks, school grounds, What's that? Right. Skateboarding bowls, comic book stores, shopping malls, etc., etc. Now, the crucial aspect of these places is that they are publicly accessible. They are publicly accessible, even though they can represent a restricted area of privacy and freedom from direct surveillance. But that's our community space. That's our public space. Now insert into that public space the phenomenon of urban renewal. So when areas are being gentrified and existing community folk, typically low income and black and brown, are on the verge of removal, residents' sentiments aren't always, "Woo, can't wait to go." Because they're in many cases being stripped of their deep-rooted history, culture, and day-to-day life world. So the sentiment in actuality for some is, hell no, we won't go. But the aldermen, private investors, architects, and even already existing residents, right, holla back, of that community have to clean up the streets, quote unquote, right? And we have to take into account, and this is, and I think this is definitely part of this picture that we're painting, the perception of what urban, low-income, black and brown youth amassing looks like. Right. Gang life. In some cases, yes. In other cases, definitely no. Now insert into this picture the element of social control. That is, cleaning up the streets, quote unquote, by shrinking those public spheres where urban youth converge. And so the social and physical construction of urban space is a keynote factor in the manner in which policing and the criminalization of youth occurs. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the contestation. It is the conflict over the use of particular urban spaces, yes, schools are one of them, that in many ways serves as the basis of the relationship between young people and police. Police are the social control agents. So in the process of gentrification, youth are squeezed out of former public spaces by redefining this space according to commercial, consumerist criteria that directly challenges the needs and the desires of young people to stress their independence, to stress their self-sufficiency. and to congregate with peers in places outside of the adult gaze, outside of state control. So the constriction of social space for these young people, plus the pressures on the police to protect the public and the business community, is premised upon an attempt to limit the visibility of young people in groups or gangs and to displace the more overt effects of the current economic crisis. And so the inevitable corollary or the net result of this is to present young, marginalized people as the enemy. And so these layers of the working class are thus transformed into, quote unquote, dangerous classes of the late 20th century. So reducing crime in this way, in my mind, really just misconstrues the problem and it exacerbates the problem as well. And we see this every night on the 10 o'clock news, right? So unless significant socioeconomic changes take place, for example, in areas of low income, we have more income support, we have paid work, social welfare provisions. There is little hope of significantly altering the extent and nature of this problem. Okay? Does that answer your question? All right, you're shaking your head. Did I get it? Okay, good. Now let's talk about Chicago public schools. And let me be clear on this.